Hey everybody, it's Mr. Cinema Junkie here with my entry to Dyslexic Nick's awesome competition. Totally 80s. Totally 80s. He wants to know a bunch of stuff that we dig about the 80s. As far as favorite comedies, favorite sci-fi and fantasy movies, favorite comedy actors, and if we own any swag from the 80s. So let's get this ball rolling, shall we? Because he said he didn't say we had to pick one. In fact, he went so far as to say that we could pick more than one favorite comedy, and that's good because personally, I think as good as the '80s were for horror, they were equally as good for comedy. There were a lot of like landmark comedies that came out back then, but some of the stuff that I liked was a little more obscure. And unless you followed '80s movies pretty closely, you probably won't know some of these titles. Um, and if you do, big ups to you. So let's get started with that. My favorite comedies from the '80s. I had to compile a couple of lists here. First one is the Whoopie Boys, starring Paul Rodriguez. I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of his, and quite frankly, I'm not either. I find his delivery sometimes a little forced, and sometimes he'll start off telling a joke and try to be clever by doing a voice, and he does the wrong voice for the character. It's ridiculous, really. But Whoopie Boys was just a collection of different comedic actors, and very over the top, very crass, very true to form for the '80s. Um, but definitely something worth watching. Uh, Very funny, in my opinion. Second is Things Are Tough All Over with Cheech and Chong. Uh, I like the movie for a number of reasons. First of all, it's classic Cheech and Chong. I mean, when you go to a Cheech and Chong movie, you know what you're going in for. You know what you're going to see. In this one, they did some roles where they were kind of like playing dual roles. They played the Middle Eastern business owners who were out after them. Um, had a trek across the country in a limo with money in it that they didn't know was there. Uh, One misadventure after another. Pretty funny stuff, in my opinion. Um, Not the first time they did the dual role thing, because I believe in Cheech and Chong's next movie, that's where Cheech played his own cousin. I thought that was pretty cool. But Things Are Tough All Over was a good one. I really like that one. Going Berserk, John Candy movie. This is another one that had like some of the SCTV alum in it. It had it wasn't the most it wasn't like the most well done comedy, but it raised laughs where it needed to. And I think one of my favorite scenes in there was when this film director Di Pasquale is trying to get the rights to film John Candy's marriage. He's a friend of his, and he's talking to the father of the bride and showing him some of his work. And he shows him a movie that he did called Kung Fu You, which was it's just so ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. It covers the basis on everything as far as like they brainwash John Candy so that he attacks her dad, and it just gets really ridiculous. Another one of my favorite scenes is between these two guys. John Candy gets arrested with this one guy, and he gets handcuffed to him. The guy makes a break for it, dragging John Candy all over the streets because he's handcuffed to him, and the guy winds up dying of a heart attack. So John Candy has to like drag him all over the place. And it gets really ridiculous, but very funny stuff. Another John Candy movie I liked is Who's Harry Crumb? Plays a detective. Again, a lot of sight gags, a lot of silliness, a lot of goofiness. Basic John Candy. Bachelor Party, the last great Tom Hanks movie ever. I love Bachelor Party. His friends are all cranks. They're all nuts. I actually found Bachelor Party in a 2-pack with the next movie on my list, Revenge of the Nerds. That was the movie that gave everybody hope that they can be somebody. All they have to do is know a lot of shit about computers and electronics. Next, I've seen this movie. It had a different title overseas, but here it's called Big Man on Campus. It's like a take on the Hunchback of Notre Dame story. Has a guy living in a bell tower on a college. This guy discovers him, and they start to groom him. He's very intelligent. Kind of takes over the whole popularity thing. Takes some of the guy's gas away from him as far as like being popular. So he doesn't really dig that too much. But it was a lot better than Encino Man. I'm just gonna go out and say that a lot of people dig Encino Man. I did not. Big Man on Campus is where it's at. Definitely cool. A good TNA comedy, Porky's. That's a good coming of age comedy for me. That was one that I really liked. You're hitting puberty. Porky's is where it's at. You know, you got a lot of tits and ass and bush, and it's just great. It makes a they do everything that you wanted to do at that age. Another good TNA comedy, Screwballs. Very over the top, ridiculous, silly, but it is what it is, and good for laughs. And the final one on my list is a classic in everybody's hearts, Weird Science. Weird Science was it never gets old to me. I mean, yeah, the way they dress, the stuff they drive, all that stuff is just so 80s, so totally 80s. But the whole comedic style just does not get old for me. The guy's brother Chet is a real asshole, and uh, if you're a victim of an older brother, or if you are an older brother, you can't help but like Chet. I mean, he's such a douche. Uh, yeah, and after I remember being a teenager and thinking, I wonder if I could hook up a doll to a car battery and make a woman. That would be great. Someone who does what I want her to do. I am still trying, man. I'm still trying. But Weird Science is definitely a good one to round out that list. So those are some of my favorite 80s comedies. And the next thing he asked was our favorite sci-fi and fantasy movies from the 80s. I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, and as little a sci-fi fan as I am, I'm even less a fantasy fan. I can watch them, but I do not go out of my way to see them. So with that in mind, my list is considerably shorter, but I do think I picked some winners in this one. Some pretty cool titles. You tell me. First off, first and foremost, and the arguments will go on about, no, it's not sci-fi, it's action, there's no science involved here, no, it's not fantasy, it's whatever, man, whatever. But my first pick is Terminator. Yeah, it's just an awesome movie. That one never gets old. It never gets old. It's just cool. It's very cool. Terminator 2, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's a good movie, but I can take or leave it. I mean, it's a good sequel. Better than Part 3 and again Part 4, I guess. But Terminator's definitely cool. Alright, now we're going to get more into like the fantasy type movies. And like I said, I'm not a huge fan, but it's kind of like what they say about art. I don't know anything about art, but I know what I like. And these are the movies I can sit through and actually watch. And I did throw one in there as kind of a gaff, kind of a joke. But it does have a cool soundtrack. It's the last one on the list. But let's get on with this list here. First one, Time Bandits. There's just something about Time Bandits I really dig. I liked where it kicks off in the kid's bedroom, and you see the horse in the night, and then all the little guys are running around trying to get through, and they find the wall to get through. They're using that map to get through his room, and it just starts off with them doing the whole pushing the wall thing when they're pushing the walls, and they're saying okay, and they start one, and they start pushing, and he goes, "Don't go on one. No one goes on one." And one of them asks, "Well, which one do you want us to go on, 2 or 3?" And he says, 3. They start pushing again. You have appearances by like John Cleese, which is pretty funny, as Robin Hood. Um, it's a good movie. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Time Bandits. Next one, Sword and the Sorcerer. Now, I remember watching this in the theater when I was younger. Cool movie. What I really, really dug about it, though, was that sword. That 3-blade sword, and 2 of the blades would shoot like projectiles. It would like shoot out. I thought that was great. And then had this little tiny dagger in the handle. Oh man, how cool is that? Have a sword like that, go around kicking some ass with that bad boy. Hell yeah, Sword and Sorcerer. And let's see. Next up, Beastmaster. Beastmaster was a movie that was directed by one of the directors that became my favorite because I really liked this movie, Phantasm, and that was Don Coscarelli. You can see some elements, not much, but if you really pay attention, you can see some elements of, I guess, of Phantasm in that one. The thing that bugged me the most about the movie, and I don't mean like in a bad way, but made my skin crawl, was when they stuck those earwigs in the guy's ear, and the worm would burrow in there and turn him into these brainless mutant slaves or whatever. I was just like, oh, I just like digging around in your ear like that. But yeah, Beastmaster, definitely cool. Who can deny? I mean, as softly filmed, I don't know why they put that haze over it. I really don't. But there's some parts in it that were kind of like, you either liked it or you didn't. But all in all, who can deny that this movie is an awesome Clash of the Titans? Clash of the Titans was awesome, and despite all the CGI and all the great effects in the remake does not hold a candle to it. I know they took some stabs at the original by, when they're digging through the box and they pull out Bubo, the owl, and the guy's like, "What is this?" And they're like, "Just leave it there. Just leave it. Don't bother it." That was kind of funny, but no, the original is still a lot better, I think, in my opinion. Definitely Conan the Barbarian has to be on that list. Conan the Barbarian was, even if you're not into those kind of movies, you have to enjoy watching it. Just an excellent movie all the way around. You got sorcerers, you got witches, you got a barbarian. And most importantly, you got Arnold Schwarzenegger, hardly saying a word. How great is that? And the last one on the list, and this was my gaffe here on this list, was Flash Gordon. All in all, a terrible movie, really. But the soundtrack by Queen, it was incredible. I used to have it on vinyl, and catch myself singing along to it and stuff, and hurting myself trying to reach the notes that Freddie Mercury would sing. When I was a kid, my voice was a lot higher, so I would try and break records with it, and I usually would just wind up getting a strained vocal cord and couldn't talk for a week. But Flash Gordon, it's cheesy, hokey, dorkish, but a lot of fun. And that rounds off my list of favorite sci-fi fantasy from the 80s. Favorite comedy actor, there are so many, so I'm just going to pick one, and that honor goes to John Candy. John Candy made quite a few films in the 80s, and very rarely did he make any bad ones. Honorable mention would have to go to Bill Murray for his appearances in Caddyshack and stuff like that. But I don't even think Caddyshack was an 80s movie. I don't remember. But John Candy is definitely the pick for me. He's definite funny all the way around. And finally, the most 80s item I own. Okay, this is really kind of scraping it a bit. I looked through a few different items, Some of these almost made the bill, almost fit the bill. Some of them did not, for different reasons. Like I had an edition that came out after the 80s, even though it was first created in the 80s. But that's neither here nor there. This is a replica. It's not an authentic one, so please don't go looking and saying, hey, those colors aren't on the original one. He's cheating. But you'll get the idea of what I'm talking about here. This is Rubik's Revenge, or a very close replica of it. It went from a 3x3 puzzle to a 4x4 puzzle. It is solved. The only reason it is solved is because it has never been unsolved. No. I would drive myself batshit doing Rubik's Cube when I was a kid, and I think it's responsible for a lot of the problems I have now. As far as anything else 80s, I have some game systems. I have like a Super Nintendo, or an NES. I have that, but I have to dig them out. Like I said, I'm in the middle of a move, so no, that ain't gonna happen. So that right there is the most 80s thing I have on hand and readily available to show. So that is it for my entry to Dyslexic Nick's competition. I want to wish everybody who enters a lot of luck, and thanks, Nick, for having this competition. Very awesome, very cool of you. And yeah, that's it. You guys take care, and I'll be talking to you soon.